7 o'clock, I'd like to call the May 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Person County Board of Commissioners to order at this time, and recognize that we do have a quorum. And I will ask Commissioner Sims to lead us in a prayer, and Commissioner Gentry in a pledge of allegiance.
Well, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for the many blessings that you have blessed us with. We ask that you would be with us and lead us and guide us as we go forth with this county commissioners meeting, and give us the ability to make wise decisions for our county. We lift up those who are suffering. We lift up those who are dealing with war in Ukraine, and we pray for peace. And Lord, we just ask that you would be with our nation as we go forward. These things we pray in your most heavenly name. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please join me. Stand by saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is discussion, adjustment, or approval of the agenda as presented.
Move for approval.
Have a motion to move to approve. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. First item of business is a public hearing, request to add Flat Rock Road to the database of roadway names used for E911 dispatching. Do we have a motion to go into public hearing?
So move.
Have a motion to go into public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ms. Sally Dawn.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Yes, ma'am.
So we've got yet another private road going in, potentially in Person County. We were approached several months ago. An individual would like to build a house off of a private easement. That easement is also being currently used by two other residences to access their homes. We did get a 2/3 majority and agreement on the name of Fast Rock Road. This does require public hearing, which is why we're here, and the road name does meet all of the requirements of local and state statutes. Our recommendation would be to approve the roadway name.
Any questions of Ms. Vaughn?
Who maintains the easement? Is that a private road easement agreement, and all the parties are agreeing to this, to maintaining it, or?
I would have to read the deeds in order to know whose responsibility it is to maintain that easement.
Okay.
It's going to really be dependent on what's in those deeds as they were written, and what those requirements are.
Right. My concern would be for residents, if they have a mortgage, if it's 10 years or newer, lenders require one in place. So I wouldn't want anybody to be caught shorthanded, not knowing.
So there is a new home going in. I don't know that they're going to be using a mortgage to finance their home.
Yeah.
I would have to read the details of
Okay.
all of those deeds, and that's just, I've done it, but it's been a couple months.
Okay.
I don't recall.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of or opposition to?
No, sir.
None signed up? None at all? Do we have a motion to close the public hearing then?
So moved.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Item number 2 on the agenda then would be consideration to grant or deny the request to add Fast Rock Road to the database of roadway names used for 911 dispatching. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Sure.
move that we grant the access for the road.
We have a motion to grant the request. Further questions or comments? No. All in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you. this point in our commissioner meetings, we do have public comment, and I'd like to make a comment as a thought and a reminder for anyone speaking to this board and the public. Just a few words. As a reminder, every now and then, before we open the floor for public comment, as I did back in November, as about 6 months ago, the law requires our board to provide public comment period every month at a regular meeting, and we want to give our citizens an opportunity to speak directly to the board about county issues and matters of public concern, and it is important for the commissioners to hear the comments of interested citizens. In fact, we think it is so important that we have a public comment period at both of our regular meetings each month. But let me say again that the purpose of the public comment period is for citizens to address county issues and matters of public concern. It is not a question and answer back and forth, although the county manager or a commissioner can follow up after the meeting. And one of my responsibilities as chairman is to maintain order and decorum, as the law says, on behalf of the board. So let me ask that everyone, including our citizens and commissioners, keep your comments focused on county issues and matters of public concern. If I hear comments about people's personal lives or anything other than county government matters, I plan to rule that out of order, and I thank you all for hearing me. So, Madam Clerk, do we have citizens signed up to address the board?
Yes, sir, we have 5 individuals signed up.
Okay, we have a 10-minute period, and that's pretty easy math. Do 2 minutes apiece. Would you keep time for us?
Yes, IT will have our timer on the clock.
Okay. And the first speaker?
Is Mr. John Seat of Samora.
Sorry. Thank you for your words, Chairman Powell. Appropriate. There's no such thing as a grouchy old person. The truth is that once we get old, you just stop being polite and you start telling the truth. One of the foundational precepts, tenets, and rights of a democratic republic is the ability to petition and address our government publicly. That is why, as you so stated, that Person County Board of Commissioners has a requirement for public comments so that you can hear public's concerns and get the public's input. Last year, on at least 3 occasions, I came before you and I asked for a status on a shell building, which this body brought up initially as something good going forward, but they never provided public status. Not once was clarification provided to the public regarding it after 3 times of asking. So I went over to the director of the EDC's office and I asked her directly, and I obtained my answer, but the general public never was informed. Some of the information seemed fishy to me, so I double-checked it with Heidi York, our county manager, and she basically said, well, Sherry Wilburn lied to me in a candid conversation, but I got the information that I requested. At the last meeting here, I asked a question about why Peg Carlson was brought in and what the final results of her visit to the county was. When I asked, I stated that I did not receive an acceptable, that if I did not receive an acceptable response to my inquiry that I would submit a public records request by the end of the day. One particular member of this board didn't appreciate being strong-armed into a response.
I'll give my time, Mr. C.
Thank you. Continuing. And he made it clear in his closing remarks that he was not happy with being strong-armed. I just want to say a citizen shouldn't come before you guys and feel like he has to force you to provide an answer. We come up here with our own time and we ask questions. We're looking for an answer appropriately and politely, and we shouldn't have to threaten you with public records request or FOIA requests. Anyway, the reason why Peg was here was because of the dysfunctionality of this board, and the summary that I got from Heidi York, which I thought was what I was looking for when we spoke, was we need an election to fix this board. That's sad, but that's basically what I got. And thank you, Heidi, for having the insight and reaching out to the UNC School of Governance. So that brings me really here to why I'm back. I have another issue. The county currently has 3 county employees who all know the rules and processes, but they've determined that they don't apply to them. We have 2 sheriff deputies, Jason and Jimmy Wilburn. They're sworn to uphold laws and ordinances of the land, while the other is Jimmy's wife, our county EDC manager. They set up an LLC, and they've been putting together an unapproved RV park. They had set up 7 pads for trailers that had electrical hookups and were hooked up to a sewage line that went to a tank. None of this was zoned. None of this was permitted. None of this was inspected. So I spoke to zoning, planning, and environmental health. And I checked today, and as of today, everything has been restored to compliance. So electric has been removed from the building. The trailers have been removed from the property, and that's the current status. There was a comment, it was kind of flippant by one of the 3. For the rest of us, it's not funny. It's not something to be cavalier over. The Berry Hills have been working for over 8 months in the county to properly build out, zone, permit, get inspected a place for RVs in the county. This isn't a victimless infraction. We as taxpayers are missing out on the funds that are gathered by those fees, those activities that actually pay the salaries of all 3 individuals. Maybe our EDC would be doing better if the EDC manager was focusing on EDC matters and not trying to run an illegal RV park with her husband and Skeet. We've got 3 counties in the state that are not growing. We're one of the 3. Chairman Powell, I'm going to ask you if you can promise us here tonight.
Time on that.
Yes, time.
Thank you, sir. Next person on your list.
Is Cynthia Lynch of Her Mills.
Good evening.
Good evening.
On something totally different, I'm here to talk about the fire district tax request. I was looking over the packet, this was last night, and I kind of, when I see statistics, I kind of take an extra look. And the current ages of volunteers, it's page 18 in the packet, and I thought it was kind of odd that one of the breakdowns was 46 to 67. That's, the age span, and that's an age span of 22 years. The other age spans were 4 or 12 or 15 years. So I just thought that was odd. And I looked it over because the point was being made that we have all these older firefighters. And I noticed if I take the 19 to 45 category, that's actually 50%. So I thought that kind of caught my attention, and so I looked at things a little closer. Now I had the opportunity to talk to one of the firefighters coming in, and he indicated that they were he felt that he was in favor of this proposal. But as I looked at it, I just have a concern, something I'm just asking you to think about. We're talking about volunteers, and I know little to nothing about fire departments, but I do know about volunteers. I've been involved in church ministry all my life. And I've noticed that when you start having paid people doing what volunteer people do, the volunteers start to drop off. You start hearing comments like, well, that's what we pay the associate pastor for, that's what we pay the youth pastor for, and people stop volunteering. The proposal before, he was talking about 2 part-time paid people in each department, as I understand it.
And if that's going to make the life better for our volunteer firefighters, better for our community, that is great. I'm just concerned that there may start being a situation where there's the paid people and the volunteer people. And as I've seen in church ministries, after a while, the volunteers start dropping off, and you need more and more paid people. And the next thing we know, we may end up with an all-paid fire department. So that's a concern I have. Now, I noticed in the paperwork that Timberlake does have a part-time person, so it'd be interesting to see what their experience has been. I don't know how long they've had that part-time paid person. That might give you some insight into how well or poorly this might work. The other thing that I thought was interesting was there was nothing in the report, which of course you're going to see later tonight, but now's my time I can speak about it. I can't wait till that report is presented to you. That it has nothing about recruitment. So I'm wondering what they are doing for recruitment to help the numbers with this problem.
Thank
So,
you very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you. And the next person, please.
Next speaker is Kathy Lawrence of Harbor Mills.
I guess I'd like to yield my time to John C., please.
I got 3 sentences more. So Chairman Powell, can you provide us here tonight that if permits are applied for, that the permitting is done without any shortcuts or special use permits, thereby rewarding these that have tried to be sly or worse, and being better than other citizens of Person County in their arrogance? Chairman Powell, we are watching, and we're asking that you commit that they are kept to county standards and discipline them for embarrassing Person County by what they are doing. Thank you for your time and your respect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Jim.
And our last speaker is Kenneth Lawrence of Harbor Mills. That will conclude our public comments, sir.
Okay, item number 3 on the agenda is a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a
Yes.
question. This is for Heidi. I couldn't kind of reconcile budget amendment number 18. I can kind of see the totals, but I couldn't get it to quite factor out. And I don't know if it's with the human services part or the intergovernmental revenues. I couldn't get the numbers to add up. I was coming up with like 37,000 instead of 40. I'm just curious.
In the total amounts?
Yeah, I
on
mean, the
side?
total, the expenditures and revenues equal, so you've got your trial balance there, but
Right.
I'm looking at the $40,000, and the $200,927. When I'm trying to reconcile the numbers, I've got a differential of, $4,000 or $5,000. I'm just curious. I didn't get a chance to talk to Amy, so I was like, I'm not sure about
I
this.
can try to get Amy to give us an explanation, but you do want the revenues and expenditures to balance. So if you-
And they do, but I just didn't know why the categories, the intergovernmental revenue
Right.
part
Sure.
is lumped together, and I just find that a little bit confusing.
Okay, let me get some clarification on what is in the intergovernmental revenues.
Okay.
I don't see that in the explanation. Do you want to pull it and we can come back to it with some answers?
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay.
So now we would just be voting on the one item for the NC Education Lottery application
Item B on your agenda.
on the consent agenda,
Right.
correct?
Do we have a motion with that change? Any board member?
You want a motion to change the consent
To
agenda?
move along with item B?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we hold on item A and go ahead and pass by item item B.
Oops. Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 4 on the agenda is Great Grant Partnerships, Zytel and Charter Communications. Ms. Kathy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am back here to talk to you about this great topic of broadband, which is one of the board's top priorities for this fiscal year. On April 18th, or no, it was March 21st, we last discussed this, and we talked about the first round of the state's great grant funding, and the deadline to apply was April 4th. After that meeting, the state extended the deadline to May 4th. So we've had some additional time to consider proposals from another provider and take a look at Charter's proposal again. So if you go back to that meeting in March, the board approved an MOU with Brightspeed to support their great grant application and set aside $1.25 million of the county's ARP funding to put towards that project if that great grant is awarded by the state. The board provided a letter of support for Charter's application, but did not provide specific financial commitment for their application, but did set aside $250,000 of ARP funds for future broadband expansion efforts. So in March, the board voted to set aside, reserve a total of $1.5 million of the county's approximately $7.6 million in ARP funding to go towards broadband. So we've continued to have discussions with providers. I know that Brightspeed is actively working on their application to the state. We did receive a third proposal from a private provider named Zytel that is based in Virginia. Rodney Gray is here with us tonight. He is the Chief Operating Officer from Zytel. And Justin Delancey from Charter is also here with us tonight. So they will both be able to provide you with a little more information as well as answer any questions that you have. But your packet did tell you a little bit more about Zytel. Part of their proposal that makes it unique is that they have an interest in utilizing some of the county-owned fiber that we built out several years ago. So this enables them to build out their project quicker and also at a lower cost. So the county would enter into an agreement with them, and there are various ways that we could do that, to lease strands of our fiber, to exchange strands of our fiber, and we can get creative with that. But that is a premise of the proposal that they have brought to us tonight. And I do want to note that the proposal that we are going to review with you tonight is different than what was in your agenda packet, because we have continued to work on this over the past week, and their engineers looked at our county fiber network and reworked their proposal with that in mind. So the numbers and what they're asking of the county is the overall project cost is less. What they're asking of us is less, and they'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. But the slides do include the new numbers. And just to remind you, a single grant award may be up to $4 million from the state, and the county could be eligible to receive up to $8 million in great grant funding. And then the reason why we're coming back to you with Charter's proposal is that applicants do receive additional points when counties are providing financial matches. And when they're all ARP funds, they get even more points. So following the last meeting that we had, I did talk with Jeff Brooks from ECC Technologies, who had done our broadband inventory for us. He had shared with me that he felt that the county having 3 strong applications in the mix would be to our advantage. We are now at that number 3, so we are just coming back to you tonight to say if you are willing to make that financial commitment to Charter and also wanting to provide support to Zytel, then that is going to help us get the strongest applications in place for the state to review and rate and decide to whom they will award the grant funding. So whichever project is deemed to be the most beneficial to the public based on their scoring criteria would then be awarded a grant in that first round of funding. They will go back if they have available funds left over and look at a second application for counties who have already received one. So we have the opportunity for more than one provider to receive these great grants. So let me introduce Justin Delancey to you from Charter and let him give you a brief overview of their project proposal, and then we can both answer any questions you have about that.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you all for having us back. I apologize I was not in person last time. I was recovering from a nasty bug, and it was probably best I just wasn't here in person. But unfortunately, I think because I wasn't here in person, I was unable to effectively communicate, and I think that some things got lost in translation. Our project has not changed from where you last saw. We're still looking. It's about 504 houses, residences, businesses that we're going to be passing with fiber. It's complete fiber to the home. And the crucial detail in that 504 that sets us apart from the other applicants is they are two completely unserved homes. So these homes are currently receiving no service, no broadband service. We're not overbuilding a network. We're not overbuilding our own network. It's two completely unserved homes. So you're really getting a bang for your buck. Your residents are getting a bang for their buck when we reach out and expand service to them. As you can see, doing that expansion will also put us in a prime position to get to another 734 locations that we've identified as being underserved. So, those are individuals that may have DSL, or they may be on a wireless system or a low-end wireline provided system. We would be better positioned to serve those in the future. You guys can see the map. As you can see, it's widespread across the county. If you'll remember before, I think one competitor had something in the southeastern portion of the county. We're truly getting to all areas of the county. Additionally, in blue on the map is the winnings that Charter got in the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. So those areas are being built to completely with fiber at no cost to the county. It's a grant between the federal government and Charter. So we're going to be building that out in addition to hopefully winnings from the great grant process. As Catherine mentioned to you last time, Charter's committed to putting in an application regardless of whether the county puts money in or not. But, as Catherine said, if we don't get some sort of financial contribution from the county, we sort of go to the back. The way that the point system works, there are speed multipliers involved with contributions. We really don't stand a good shot if the county doesn't put forward a contribution. And putting in that $250,000 would maximize our score in the eyes of the state. And that's all I've got. Do you guys have any questions?
Define speed multiplier.
So it's when you look at the GREAT grant, it is a nasty web matrices of, if you kind of, depending upon what the county puts in, what Charter puts in, it sort of spits out a score at the end. Well, you get some sort of base points in there for partnerships with a county. Mm-hmm. Any sort of financial contribution whatsoever will get you a point. Because the county received less than $8 million. Did I beat? Okay.
Time's up.
Darn. Because the county received less than $8 million in ARPA funds, you guys are on sort of a different grading rubric than other counties. So all you guys have to put up is $250,000 to hit the max. Whereas a larger county such as Wake would have to put in $1 million to get 1 point. You guys can put in $250,000 and get 7. On top of those base points, there are speed multipliers. So if a provider comes in like Charter, like Brightspeed, and were to build a fiber network, that hits sort of the top end multiplier. So it sort of really capitalizes on those base partnership points when you get a provider that can come in and build fiber, which is what we're proposing. So it all sort of builds on itself, but if you don't have that strong base of a partnership with a county, your application just doesn't stand a good chance. Like an auction. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at Brightspeed. They're showing that they're going to implement 2,602 homes into their expansion. you're doing 500. Zytel is 2174. Your cost is almost 100,000 more than theirs.
Yes,
What's
sir.
the
So this goes back to my comment about completely unserved homes. So what you'll see, and I'm not here to throw stones, what you will see is it is a lot easier to overbuild your own current network than it is to go out and build a completely new network to reach new people. So Charter doesn't have, for instance, we don't have DSL in the state. We're complete either hybrid fiber coax system or complete fiber system in North Carolina. Other providers aren't. So when they're trying to get to that fiber threshold, they're overbuilding their old system, and it's a lot cheaper to do so. But you're not reaching new households when you do that.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Commissioner comments, questions?
Well, how do you weed out, and Catherine, you've been working on this for a long time. I'm sure you know more about broadband than you ever thought you might, but when you're talking about the unserved locations, you're talking about your competitors already having service to what percentage of these people in a different capacity versus fiber versus DSL, or something that, how do you know the difference?
So we're heavily reliant on FCC mapping. So every provider, when they supply service to an area, has to tell the FCC, this is the census block that I provide service to, and these are the speeds with which I provide service to that block. Other than that, I can't see what a competitor is doing in their particular service area, but I can see that they've claimed a census block. So these households are in census blocks that are completely unclaimed by anyone. So we have some we have some strong assurance that they are not currently served, because if I serve one house in a census block, I'm going to try and claim that census block.
All right. And this goes, now I think at the last meeting, Commissioner Puryear stated a question, and if I remember correctly, it goes directly to, it's all the way to the residents.
Yes, that's correct. So this, by building with the great grant, it would go fiber completely to the premises.
How many other grants are you applying? Are you other communities, other counties?
I'll tell you, and I'm being cryptic because the grant process isn't closed. We serve 91 counties so far in the state. We're applying to a majority of those counties.
Okay. Now, with the majority of those counties, we have unserved areas of 500, or what would you say the average of those other counties would be for the unserved areas reached?
By charter in our applications?
If you can disclose that.
I think this is, when you look at, obviously every county is different, and it would sort of be unfair to provide that, but this isn't the smallest grant application, and it's not the largest. And when I'd say it's probably middle of the pack. I mean, this is a median-sized application.
So we're looking at, I'm still kind of confused here. We've got 500 unserved, totally unserved of any type of service whatsoever.
Any type of broadband. So
Any type of broadband.
So the
okay.
threshold for broadband is 25 megabytes upload and
Gotcha.
3 megabytes download. I have that backwards, I'm sorry. 25 download.
Yeah, okay.
It's been a long day.
All right, that makes sense.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so but we're saying possibly that say Brightspeed or Zytel's got 2,800 homes, and you say 2,300 of them are already maybe covered. If you're going after the same geographical locations that they are,
Yes, ma'am.
so they've got 2,300 of those 2,800 homes that are already getting some type of service, even though it's not high speed.
Again, I can't speak for other
Okay,
providers, but I would.
Catherine?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So the Great Grant criteria does define unserved as being below the 25.3 speed. So
Okay.
each of the providers who are submitting their grant application has gone through their own individual process to look at the available data. So whether that's FCC data, data that's been reported through the North Carolina One Map, through the North Carolina Department of Information Technology. That's available to them. Of course, like with Brightspeed, with already having a presence in Person County, they know what speeds their households are getting, to a very refined degree beyond that census block. So they're able to factor that into their proposal. So in building out their existing network, they can improve the service that's already being provided, and that is deemed unserved based on that particular, if it's a slow DSL connection right now, based on that definition.
Okay.
So they've each gone through a process to look at where can we identify those unserved households to meet, that would meet the definition, and they've had various resources available to do that, and then determined for them operationally what makes sense. In Zytel's case, it's a new presence in the county, starting from scratch to a certain degree. And then for Charter and Brightspeed, it's how do they build upon what they currently have to either improve it or expand it to reach more of our citizens. In doing so, they're going to reach unserved households. They are also going to get within easier reach of some who might not, they might not meet the definition of unserved right now, but they're not at that 100/100 speed that we're trying to get to with this project. So they will, in the process of building out and reaching the unserved, they're going to be better situated to also provide these higher speeds to other households that they're passing that might fall more into the category of underserved currently. So it's not just a matter of meeting those 500 households in Charter's case. They will be able to provide faster and more reliable service to other households as well. Thank you. Have we adequately answered those questions? Okay. Now I'll invite Rodney to come up and speak on behalf of Zytel. Yes,
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
We've only talked on the phone.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I want to thank you for taking the time to let me come up here and speak to you guys tonight. So my name is Rodney Gray. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Zytel. Zytel is a privately owned ISP located in southwestern and south central Virginia. We started in 2017. We're a fiber to the home internet service provider. And let's see here. Wrong way. So one of the things that makes us different in Zytel from what we have, what we see as our competitors, is that we have sprung up from an IT background. Myself and my partner Brandon are 20 years in the IT industry. I myself was a director of technology for one of the local governments in Virginia. And then I came across and started working with Brandon for developing an ISP. So that's different than I think what you see from a lot of your current ISPs, where they come from the telecommunications, the old Mob Bell backgrounds. It gives us a different perspective on what we can do and as the fact that we're a smaller regional provider. We have more options involved in that we can partner with the county and treat you more like a partner. We can utilize infrastructure that you already have. Your dark fiber that you can lease to us, dark fiber that we put in place that we will give back to you guys, and come to an agreement that you guys can use it for a municipality build. We do things, some of the things that we did in Virginia is that we partner with local volunteer fire departments. I know all of you have seen these ugly little beige buildings on the corners of property that have the chain link fence around them. They're called a POP, a point of presence. That's where telecommunication providers push out their fiber or their infrastructure to the local around them. Instead of building those, we decided to go to volunteer fire departments, volunteer rescue squads, and say, let us use your closet in the back, use that as a POP, give us an IRU for the next 100 years, we'll give you free internet for the rest of the time that you guys occupy this building. So we have 3 fire departments in local Virginia, in the rural counties of Virginia, that we provide that service to for free. They give us a key to a back door, we can come in and check the fiber whenever we need to. When it's we develop an IRU, an irrefutable right to use on that property. We also focus on rural areas. We live in Bedford County, Virginia. That's where we started the company, right by Smith Mountain Lake. The reason we started this company is because we run an IT consulting company. Brandon, my partner, moved there. realized it was going to cost him $30,000 to pull Comcast, get Comcast to build down his driveway. We're having a conversation back in 2017 and said, for $30,000, we put fiber in our entire neighborhood. So we did. And that's how we started. We applied for Tobacco Commission grant money in Virginia. COVID came around. One of the good things about COVID is that local governments realized what an important necessity broadband is in rural areas. And we got some of the COVID dollars for Bedford County and Campbell County to start building our infrastructure out. We're a VODI Award winner for the state of Virginia. VODI is Virginia's Great Grants equivalent. One of the things we do, we keep our overhead low. We are very low end on the upper management to keep our payroll way down. We don't have 7 board members and a vice president of everything you can think about. As you see, I'm the chief operating officer, not a government affairs officer or vice president of government affairs that's here to solicit for your partnership on the Great Grants Award. We put our time and money into the infrastructure and into the employees that do the work. We own our own outside plant construction. When you see our numbers, I'm sure one of your questions is going to be, how do you guys build so much cheaper for the passings you have and the number of miles of fiber you put in the ground? Because we actually do the work ourselves. We own an outside plant construction company. That's the company that hangs the fiber on the pole and puts it in the ground. Most of our competitors subcontract about 70% of that work out. We're the opposite. We do about 70% of the work ourselves, and we subcontract only about 20 to 30% where we absolutely have to. Those crews we keep busy by leasing them out and doing subcontract work for the bigger providers, Verizon, AT&T. Most of our crews are in Arkansas right now doing work for AT&T in Little Rock. Let's see. If you see on the map, these are some of our footprints. Unlike our competitors, we readily put our footprint and our layout of our fiber plant. We don't have any type of proprietary. We don't make anybody sign an NDA. There's our footprint of where we're at right now in the state of Virginia. One of the biggest builds we have is in the city of Danville. It's a municipality build where the city of Danville built their entire fiber network within there, invited us to come on and be a partner, and we provide service to over 14,000 passings in the city of Danville. Naturally, we're moving south from Bedford County. We saw the northern counties of North Carolina as a proper progression for us to move into the state. This is our VODI 2022 build for Bedford County. It's over 410 miles of fiber with about 11,000 passings, 5,000 of which were considered unserved and underserved, that we've got the next 18 months to build. We're starting construction next month. We can do about 40 miles of fiber in the ground per month when we focus on one single project. Obviously, that would, if we get some great grants awards here in the northern counties, that will be lessened. So this is the proposal. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely need my glasses. This is the proposal that we put in front of Catherine for Person County. In our proposal, we have over 2,800 eligible address passings. An eligible address is, like you guys were discussing first before, it's an unserved address in Person County. Those persons fall into the criteria, passings fall into the criteria where they're less than the 25.3 standard that the FCC sets. So we managed to reach 2,831 passings. If you look on the NC1 website or NCDIT, you can see I think there's 3,700, according to the NC1 and FCC, there's 3,700 unserved, underserved passings in Person County. NCDIT, the North Carolina Department of Information Technology, they admit that that's probably low because it's really hard to get some of the maps out of providers and get them to report because they see that as proprietary confidential information. On top of that, we're going to pass 5,589 total address passings. So included in the 2,800, another 3,000 passings of people that are already served by either Brightspeed or Lumen, Spectrum. So we'll bring a competitive edge to the market. So your citizens, 3,000 of your citizens will have a choice of a second provider to choose from. It's going to be about 105.5 miles, but these numbers are going to change because we're going to work with Catherine and the IT department for Wednesday about where we're going to partner and utilize county-built fibers and what else we can offer to you guys if we do become the grant recipient of what you guys can use of our fiber to meet. And we've already started negotiations. I think your IT director set us up the stipulations on what you require, and none of that was out of the ordinary of what we would agree to. The total project cost is $5.4 million approximately, with a grant request of $2.7 million and then you split the remainder between the county and Zytel. You guys had already allotted 1.25 million, and this is a competitive bid with Brightspeed. More than likely, only one of us will be chosen to win the grant. So our footprints are very, very similar to what Brightspeed has versus what we have. So the NCDIT would choose one over the other. So now the nice thing is, it's very difficult to explain. I'll try my best because I don't understand it a lot. And it's about the matrix of the scoring. Is that the 50-50 split is what you apply for great grants for. You apply for a 50-50 split, half paid by the county and Zytel, half paid by the grant. But then, because you guys meet certain criteria, you're not a Tier 3 county in the state of North Carolina, you didn't receive $8 million from your ARPA funding, and we're going to score greater than 22 points before the multiplier that the previous gentleman spoke to you about. We can get your grant contribution down, and our grant contribution down to 30%. Now, the wording in the grant proposal is may. They specifically say, we may lower your stipulation from 50% to 30%, which those numbers I think I provided to Catherine in an email today, and we came up with the calculations. We're running scenarios of what our points and numbers would look like. If that happens, then the great grant match would come up from 2.7 million to the max of 4 million because it meets the 85%. That's the 85%. Then the split for Person County and Zytel would only be about $714,000. So you would save $500,000 from your ARPA funding that you wouldn't have to put towards this project. And your cost per passing for 5,500 passings drops down to less than $127 per passing for what you're getting there. So you don't know until you apply. The objective is to apply, get enough points so that the costs for the county come down and you can save that money and then save it for either the CAB funding, the CAB grant program, or the following Great Grants Part 2. So I've included in here a pricing structure. This shows our complete pricing structure on how we, what we charge our customers, what our speeds are for small business residential. We're very upfront about what we charge, what our costs are going to be, and we do not put anybody under contract, ever. You're with us month to month. You can cancel after 2 months. And if you could, but we feel that our customer service is going to keep you there. The reason is we have a staff of, not a lot, but a staff of young ladies and gentlemen that answer the phone when you call. And if you need to speak to me, you just ask for me. If you need to talk to them about customer service, they talk to you. So we're going to design the way we do business the way we didn't like. I live in Roanoke, and I have Cox Communications. I'll throw them under the bus because they drive me nuts. Every 2 years, my cable and internet bill goes up to $250 a month. I got to call them back, and they tell me I'm not in the special program anymore. Well, we're never going to do that. It's not the way we do business. We also, with this plant, we overbuild everything we do, so any industrial parks, any buildings, any shell buildings that you have, we can offer enterprise class, which is a dedicated strand of fiber directly to that. Our rates are falling about $1 per meg. Maybe a little more if you stay low. If you get up to a gig speed, it's going to be a little less than $1 per meg. This is our new future pricing structure. We're going to a complete asynchronous build, so instead of those upload-download speeds that are different numbers, you're going to get 100 over 100 or 1,000 over 1,000. Gigabit up and down. Pricing is going to change very little. They're basically $5 a month increases. Everything else, all the pricing stays exactly the same. Easily published. You can go to our website and see it. A new offering that'll start before we are offered any great grants, and even for VADI, this is one of the things we wanted to start, is a free internet program. We're on the ACP program, which is the Affordable Connectivity Program from the federal government. They will give $30 to anybody that qualifies as low income in a low income household. That we put this program in so that it would be basically double the FCC standard of 25 over 3. It's a 50 meg over 10 meg. If you financially qualify for ACP, it's free internet for you. And we'll install that completely for free, and you'll get to use it, and we deal with getting the reimbursement from the federal government. It's kind of like similar to the E-rates that you guys get for libraries and schools. So, like I explained, Zytel is we're designed for where fiber goes that other people won't. One of our slogans is where country roads and fiber meet. That's where we build. We build in the rural parts of Virginia, natural progression to come into the rural parts of North Carolina. Some of the things that we do differently that our competitors can't do. For any of your 2,800 homes in the great grants, that the drop, I know that's a concern with everybody, is how getting down the mile-long driveway to the farmhouse, getting on the gravel driveway. For the 2,800 homes that are in the great grant, that are eligible great grants, we do it for free. We trench it, we put it in for free, there's no cost, no obligation. Anybody that's outside the great grants, so the other 3,000, we still take care of them and want to get them the internet installed for no upfront costs. So since we have nobody under any terms, and we only, anything above 1,000-foot drop, 1,000 foot is kind of it's our barrier. Some people go to 1,200 or 1,100, we just look the other way. So you have a 2,500 foot drop. We only charge $1 per foot to install that fiber. Still, that's $1,500. Somebody comes to me and says, give me $1,500 to have internet. I'm scratching my head trying to figure out, okay, where am I going to rob Peter to pay Paul to get this? So what we do is we offer an opportunity for the customers, okay, this is when you can get into a contract with us. 24 months, 36 months, 48 months, whatever you can afford. Sign a contract for that length. We knock off 30% right off the bat of that total drop length. So the $1,500 loses 30%, and we just easily divide it by 36 or 48. They pay that much extra per month to install the internet, and that way there's no upfront charges, there's no install costs. So really I see us that we're a type of fiber optic internet company that does business different than everybody else. We learned how to do it based on what we don't like with what we've been in the years of IT industry and dealing with all of the internet service providers. So, thank you for your time. Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
I have a list. Several of you in this room are contractors that has been around cable, electrical, power, and telephone lines, fiber optic cables, but this may sound mundane and stupid to some of you guys, but some of us in here know exactly what I'm asking. How many crews, overhead and underground, do you carry?
Currently we have 5 overhead crews.
And
we have 6 underground crews, maybe more, because we cross-train a lot of our employees.
Okay.
So when our underground crews are not building mainline on the side of the road, in the easements, wherever it is, we can pull them and they can do drops. They can do the barriers through the yard.
Right,
So they're
right,
we call it ambassador training.
Right.
I mean, whenever we bring on a new employee, they get trained in every aspect. I'll just give you an example. Kaylee, our receptionist that she's been with us for a while, but she went out with road crews and learned how to do, not to drive a machine, but just to see this concept of what we do. So when somebody calls in and says, hey, your crew came through my yard and it looks horrible. You know, the machine tore it all up, the grass is horrible. She understands what they mean by that, how the machine can tear it up and what they do. Because I'm not saying we never make mistakes like that, and we have to do restorations and come out and do that, but we do. Now, getting grants with VODI, we're still working with the contracts with Bedford County, because VODI works kind of like the way I think the CAB program's going to work. We partnered with this county, the county applied for the VODI grant, the state gives the money to the county, and the county pays us as we do the work and reach certain milestones. So we have to have a contract in place with Bedford County. We're ready to sign that. I think the county attorney said we're ready next week to sign off that contract, and funding will start. We're probably going to expand by 3 crews just for that project alone. One of the reasons we can keep those crews employed is because we're a prime contractor with like AT&T, different providers, Segra, and different large-scale providers that we then, when we're not building for ourselves, we can send those crews to places like Little Rock, Arkansas, and keep them working.
another question, do you have the capabilities to bore in the roadways?
To bore the road, yes, sir. We have 4 JT20 vertical drills, and I can't remember the model numbers, but we have a couple Vermeers, the yellow ones. I call them the yellow and the oranges.
Question number 3, security coverage. I remember years and years ago installing power cables buried in the ground. When we were near fiber optic cables, there was a helicopter. If you were digging nearby, they flew those lines daily. What is the, I guess, is this a difference between Virginia and North Carolina? Do you provide, or who does this coverage? Who provides this security coverage for the fiber cables?
I'm not sure. I have not heard of this. This is new to me. So I don't know if we're supposed to be providing security for when we,
Well,
you know.
at the time, 30 years ago, if we damaged a fiber optic cable, it was $1,000 a minute to repair.
Yeah, I wish we got paid that much, but we don't.
Now, this was 30 years ago.
Because we've had a lot of other utilities damage our fiber. You know, being in the rural areas, I can tell you, we've had quite a few that one of the unnamed water authorities, let's just say, we marked, they called Miss Utility, we marked our little orange spray paint.
Mhm.
They went ahead and bored under the road and said, well, we've never had any underground utilities here before. What do you mean? We do now. So, it's the first I've heard of that. I'd have to look into that. I mean, maybe that was because 30 years ago, the government was more in control of most of the fiber optic cable that was in the ground. I haven't heard of that before. We are gridded with Miss Utility Virginia, the 811 for Virginia. We would obviously work to get that in North Carolina if we're awarded some of the grants. We are licensed with the State Corporation Commission in North Carolina to do business here. We have all the paperwork in place. We're working with NCDOT. We have a great relationship with VDOT, so we are working with NCDOT to get in the to get our permitting for all the easements. Of course, if we go through any towns or localities in the counties, then we work with those towns and localities to get the easements taken care of.
Okay, that's just some general questions that came out of my brain from 30 years ago. I'm a contractor. I consider myself a dirt eater. That's all I've ever did was construction work.
That's what I grew
and
up
I
into.
know construction work very well. That's why I threw that at you, because I want to know if one of our main trunk lines gets damaged. Yes, we would find out real quickly. But how fast would your reaction time be to come and repair?
Well, we are going to open an office here in the northern counties of, if we win some of the great grant bids, we have 5 other counties, four that have already sponsored us, and hopefully one tonight, and hopefully another one tonight. My partner is at Franklin County tonight, doing the exact same thing, probably right about now. And we're hoping to get all 5 of them. If we do, then we'll probably open an office and start employment here somewhere, maybe in Vance County, which is central, because we're working from Northampton to here.
Okay.
And then including Franklin County and Halifax and the counties around there. So we'd probably open an office. I mean, it only took me an hour and 40 minutes to get here from our headquartered office. So even if we had to dispatch employees and service repair people, you're looking at, we don't have but an hour to get here to Roxborough.
Thank you. I like your presentation.
Thanks, sir. And exactly, I'm a dirt guy too. My dad was an excavator. I grew up in the back of a Caterpillar backhoe too many summers when I was in high school.
I know where you've been.
I guess a simple question is whether it's an appliance or a car or whatever, service after the sale is important to the customers all around the county. So what is your plan? I know you're talking about an office and this sort of thing, but response time to?
We do have an SLA for our residentials. Our SLA for residential is within 48 hours after troubleshooting online, we'll dispatch a truck to come to your area. Right now, our SLA, that's a standard residential service agreement. Small business and enterprise are somewhere between 8 to 4 hour response time for businesses. As of right now, where we stand, we have not had a dispatch where we haven't rolled a truck the same day. And I would like to see us try to keep up that standard, where we can roll a truck if somebody needs assistance when we go out on the same day. I'd like to try to keep that level of service. Bedford County is one of the larger counties in all of Virginia.
What's the population there?
Not population-wise. Population for Bedford County, I think, is 64,000.
Okay.
But just land-wise, they're one of the larger physical square acreage counties. I cannot tell you what it is. And we're from one end to the other, from the western side to the eastern side, and we're located right in the middle. And it's a good hour drive to get across the county, if not more, and we can dispatch trucks in the same day. But yes, customer service and aftercare for the customers. I mean, we don't have people contract. Our customers aren't contracted to stay with us. If we don't provide them good customer service, they'll go somewhere else. Our customers are, they can go, if they don't like our service and don't like our customer service, which we think is big, they can easily go back to the satellite internet or the fixed wireless they had until another provider comes into their area. So we ensure that we provide great customer service, answer the phones when they call. Right now, we're operating from 8 to 5 p.m. on our standard calls, but you can leave a message and it'll go to our on-call system after that. Once we expand into North Carolina and expand into multiple counties from where we're at right now, we're going to go to 7 to 7 to start that on the 7 to 7.
Okay. Considering what the county has invested in the last few years with fiber, with towers, could either of you explain how you plan to light up some of these strands that we have and make it work for this project? Do they coincide?
Well, yes, ma'am. We can't do anything with your towers other than if you have towers that you're putting fixed wireless or E911 systems on them or something like that, we can light them up. We can run fiber to them. If we pass close to them, we'll drop off and give you fiber there. Like I said, we overbuild greatly with the
We've
number of
got the
strands of fiber.
52 miles of fiber in the ground.
We're hoping to utilize about 28 miles of that fiber in this build. We've still got engineers looking at it and looking at your layout, but we're hoping to use about 28 miles and looking at some of your future plan and what you guys had thought you wanted. And of course, this is something we would work with your IT department on, and where your municipalities and your community anchor buildings, your schools are located. If you guys want dark fiber built to those and we pass by them, then we'll be most certainly to do some type of trade-off for the use of that fiber to give you more strands of dark fiber on our network that you can utilize.
Okay, you mentioned volunteer fire departments, and we've got a small group here tonight with us from volunteer fire departments. How do you work with those in schools and entities like that?
Well, with the volunteer fire departments, I mean, basically, with the ones we're working with, all 3 of them are in Bedford County. Called up the local chief. What do you need? One of the let's take Boonesboro for example. The Boonesboro volunteer fire department, right outside of Lynchburg. I called Chief Lewis. Who do you guys use for internet? He told me, and his next words were, "We pay too much." I said, "How would you like it for free?" We talked to our attorney. Our attorney drafted an IRU, which is an irrefutable right to use. He handed it over to one of his volunteers that were on staff. That volunteer took it to his father, who happened to work at a local legal law firm. They came back and forth. We ended up signing a contract with them. We provide them with free internet. And this contract reads, we provide them with the fastest internet that we provide to the public. Right now, that's a gig over a gig circuit. If we upgrade in 5 years and it's 2 gig over 2 gig is our fastest service, all those volunteer fire departments will get that.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner, questions? Anyone? Kathy?
I have a summary.
Okay.
Put on action
Thank you, John.
items. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
You did?
Can we have the slides back up, please? Okay, in the slides that you have in front of you, we do have a table there that just compares each of these 3 projects. I think these are in a printout that were provided to you, and
Yeah,
I'll talk through it until we get it back up on the screen. But it does just lay out the numbers associated with each project that you have heard tonight. The ARP funding request, again, is $250,000 for charter, and then Zytel, in submitting their application, would like to include $1.25 million from Person County as a match. As Rodney said, that is likely to turn out to be less once the application is scored and they do their multipliers and they determine exactly, and this is at the state level, what the match will be required, because they are currently asking for $2.7 million in great grant funding. They very well may receive $4 million in great grant funding, so that would leave $1.4 million left to fund in the project, and that would be shared cost between us and Zytel. So what I'm asking, and just to reiterate, the CAB program is next. All 3 of these providers have expressed an interest in continuing to work with us moving forward to continue to build out our broadband infrastructure in Person County, to continue to improve the services for our citizens and for our businesses. So decision points tonight. Determine whether or not you support Zytel's application. Do you want to do a letter of support for them, like you have done for Charter and Brightspeed already? Would you like to make a financial commitment to their application? So what they're requesting is the $1.25 million. Are you comfortable saying, yes, we would put that much of our ARP funding into their application. It may very well be less than that, but up to that. So what type of financial commitment would you consider making for Zytel? Also, reevaluating financial support for charter's application. Do you want to commit to reserving $250,000 of ARP funding if they are the winner in the great grant process? And then I did put a proposed resolution in your packet, and this was with the intent to kind of structure this decision. It would say, going forward, whose applications are you supporting? So I currently have Brightspeed, Charter, and Zytel listed there. We can remove a name if you are not in support of Zytel tonight. And the resolution would state how much money you're setting aside of ARP funding. So, for example, I think I used in the agenda packet, for example, $2.5 million. So that way, and I don't even want to say it's worst case, because it would be awesome if Brightspeed and Zytel both won great grants, and they had projects that were big enough that, you know, that required county funding in that amount. But more than likely, we will not need to use that whole $2.5 million in this round of great grant funding. But the 2.5 is there. If Charter wins and Brightspeed wins, it covers what you need to contribute to them. If Brightspeed wins and Zytel wins, then you can contribute that to their projects. And then we have that money set aside. $2.5 million is the example that I've used. Then we can move forward with allocating our other ARP dollars to these other projects that we have put out on the table as being possibilities for transformational projects within Person County. So the resolution would just stipulate that you are reserving a certain amount of the ARP funding for broadband expansion going forward. And I know that is a lot of information that we've thrown at you tonight. There are a lot of moving pieces here. Hope we've adequately explained, and we're all still here to answer any questions that you have as you talk through this.
So going forward, then we would, we can make these applications, we can make the commitments to all three of them on the financial side with a letter of support, a letter of intent. We don't know when. Do you have any idea when the grants are going to be awarded, when that final day will come?
I do believe the time frame is over the next couple of months for them to start making decisions, because they want to get the CAB program going right after that. Originally, I think they were saying late summer for that. So I know it's been extended by a month. I don't have an exact date.
I personally like the Zytel's platform and their business model, because they get it. They're rural. They started a business because they lived in a community like ours, and they said, we want better service. They get it. I'm not saying that Charter doesn't get it or Brightspeed doesn't get it, but they just, their boots have been in the mud, you know, at the same level. And I think that's important to not include them with the track record that they've done so far. You know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. They know rural areas. So I think we should include them.
I have a question on the, as you said, we set aside 2.5 million. So one wins, and so what will we do with the rest of the money?
So with the rest of the money, you do not have to use it for broadband. You can make a decision later on that you've put this much into the Great Grant program and you want to use that ARP funding for a different purpose. You have the flexibility to do that. But reserving it now allows us to have the provider say in their application to the state that Person County is committed to partnering with us, and they've set aside this amount of money for Great Grant projects. So if we spent $1.5 million on the Great Grant and you've reserved 2.5, we may come back to you with some options for the CAB program when we learn what all the provisions of that program are. And you may want to use that $1 million for the CAB program to partner with a provider to reach more households that we identify as being reachable through that program. You might use $1 million, you might add to it, you might not use it all. So you retain the flexibility. But in making this decision right now, you're committing to getting through this great grant process with that money set aside, so that if we do get, 2 grant awards in our county, then we have committed to having that money available for the county match for both of them.
So just to clarify, the $1.25 million for Brightspeed and Zytel, only one's going to win.
Not necessarily.
Okay, well, that's not
Right.
what I heard. Okay. go
No,
ahead.
they, one of them, for example, if Brightspeed wins, and we've already signed an MOU with them, and we've said we're going to give them $1.25 million towards their project. If then the state goes through and looks at a second batch of applications, so that the intent is that they will give one within each county that is applying for this funding. So if they still have grant funds available after they've awarded a grant in each county, then they're going to go back through and look at their scoring again. And I do not know exactly what that process is going to look like, because they are going to work with those providers to refine their proposals and eliminate some of the duplication. So, in all likelihood, that project becomes smaller than originally proposed if there's some overlap. So, again, just with the scoring is a little bit ambiguous, and the second round isn't completely defined, so it's likely not going to take the 2.5, even if our 2 biggest projects were awarded.
I just heard that that Zytel had the similar plan as Brightspeed. And so if you're telling me one's going to get the grant and they will circle back around and redefine the proposed areas, that was my question.
Yep.
One more question I think
Yes.
you might be able to answer. I've since been elected, been pounded about the northeastern sector of the county, and I'm trying to remember, several meetings ago, we had one provider here that mentioned they were heading that way with their fiber.
Well, there is a bit of the northeastern section captured in Charter's proposal.
Okay.
And and some of the RDOF funding that they're receiving from the federal government that's already in progress is also in the northeastern part of the county. And then some of what Brightspeed proposed would also reach some of the northeastern part of the county. But that also is something where if we don't get it through the Great Grant Program, that next opportunity to look and further determine who still needs service, the CAB program is going to offer us the opportunity to. We have a little more input into that process. Right now, the providers are kind of driving it. They have sought our input, but they are making the grant application. It kind of flips once you get to the CAB program, is my understanding.
So do we need to have, we're going to need to make a motion on adding additional ARP funds for this? And then also, are we to approve the attached resolution as well tonight? Is our plan, or what you would like?
If y'all are willing to do that, the resolution says that you support all 3 applications, and we left a space there to enter in an amount that you would be reserving in the ARP funding for this purpose.
So in supporting all 3 of them, you want the total amount for all 3 reserves? Okay, just.
We have signed an MOU with Brightspeed, so you have committed to that if they are awarded. But this just makes the pot deeper and gives you some more flexibility in the event that a different provider is chosen or a second application is awarded.
So if we do all 3, it's going to be more than 2.5. I want to be a little bit more.
2.75.
Yes.
Well, sure, yes. If they all ended up getting an award, and again, we can only get 2 $4 million grant awards, so it might possibly cap out with 2 awards if Brightspeed and Zytel were both chosen. I mean, there is a situation, I guess, where 3 could end up getting funded if they are having to rework the proposals. Again, I don't think you're going to get to $2.75 million because I think they would get reworked, and but it's a bit unknown. So 2.75 covers everything that's been presented to you here. And again, you retain the flexibility once you get through the great grant to use that money for other purposes.
Repurpose the money, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in your professional opinion, it's much deeper
Well-
than mine, do you recommend that we go with all 3, leave all 3 names there?
I do think supporting all 3 applications is to the county's benefit. If you put 2.75 aside, then you're committing fully to all 3 of the exact plans that are in front of you.
But I also think what you're saying is that, first of all, it's going to be difficult to get 2, but much less, then you think about now you're getting 3 that are approved. I agree with you on that. I don't think we're going to see 3, but we are prepared if we do put this money aside.
Right.
We are prepared if it is 3, and get lucky enough, if you will, for that. But that's what we're covering when we say this.
Right.
My anticipation is we're going to be putting money back in the pot after we committed this 2.75.
Let me ask this, so are you comfortable with the amount of all 3 and us having enough in reserve to pursue the CAB grants?
So, I don't know. More than likely, we're not going to need $2.75 million through the grant process, and we'll have money for CAB. Again, a definite unknown. That doesn't
But
make a lot
you
of sense,
cannot-
but we can come back and
Right.
revisit it. We're going to bring to you recommendations for funding other projects with the ARP funding. But you can keep in the back of your mind that there may be additional broadband opportunities. So, you may not want to allocate everything in one fell swoop. You might fund a couple projects, and then you still have some ARP funding set aside that you can use in the future for other broadband expansion and
I
add to
don't
this.
think that broadband expansion and growth is going to go away. I think it's going to be something that's a continual thing that we're going to have to be working on and building. So I think that the risk of committing the money to say is minimal compared to the return that we would get for it. So I'm comfortable with it. I think it's a good idea.
Was that a motion you were?
No, I'm just making a comment.
No,
If
Mr.
anybody else wants to
Sims.
make comments before we make a
Comments?
motion.
If there's no other comments, I would make, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, anyway, we're reaching unserved areas, we're improving the quality of life for the residents.
And if I can make a motion, I would make the motion that we go ahead and accept all 3, and the money that we will put aside be $2.75 million.
And that motion includes the resolution.
Yes, include the resolution.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Catherine.
Item number 5 on the agenda is fiscal year 23 Fire District Tax Request. Adam Morris. Finally got your turn.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time, for letting me come out tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Manager York, Assistant Manager Kathy, Clerk Reeves, for trying to find the best time to squeeze this in. Of course, there's never a good time about taxes, and this being the first time I'm coming before you all to make a presentation too, so here I am. So thank you to the Person County Chiefs Association members. Some of those are here in the background, members of the volunteer fire departments, rescue squad, board members, and the families of all of these personnel. Last time I spoke to some of you, I was serving in a different role. I was the president of the Person County Chiefs Association. Moved into the fire marshal job here back in January, so I'm no longer the president. That is now Jason Fletcher, the chief of Timberlake Volunteer Fire Department. I also stepped down as the deputy chief of the Allensville Fire Department and just a training captain now, because I didn't want to have any conflicts of interest or favoritism moving forward. So Manager York briefly mentioned in the budget retreat about the fire tax proposal, from 2.75, what it is now, to 5 cents. Not a 5 cent increase, but just 2.75 to 5 cents. So not quite doubling, you're going up 2.25 cents. So I want to share some of that with you tonight. But before we start, I want to go back in a little history. October 5th, 2009, previous Fire Marshal John Gentry contracted with a consulting group out of Sparta, North Carolina, to do a fire needs assessment for Person County. The consultants went around to all the fire departments, City of Roxborough Fire Department, Rescue Squad, gathered all the data for the amounts of calls that were answered, response to call members and the department's age, type of equipment, recommendations for part-time employees, and steps to work towards lowering the ISO. According to the minutes from the meeting, other than thanking the consultants for the time and the presentation, nothing else was noted or implemented. November 20th of 2017, the President and Vice President of the Chiefs Association made a presentation to the Board of Commissioners asking for implementation of the fire tax, so the VFDs would come out of the fire tax versus your general fund. The suggested rate was 4.25, but was later approved at the current rate at 2.75. That was implemented on July 1st, 2018. June the 4th, 2020, a recommendation was made to the Board of Commissioners for the amount of the bonus money to be awarded after you've received the ISO lowering. That came about at $7,500 per points, and the group was not ready to start earning any paid volunteers at that time. So last year in 2021, the Person County Chiefs Association decided to gather the data, kind of the same lines that the fire needs assessment was done back in 2009, to look at supporting paid staff during the daytime in the volunteer fire departments. We're not looking to do away with the volunteer fire departments by no means. We're just trying to supplement during the daytime when the calls are the most frequent. 5 departments, Samora, Timberlake, Allensville, Hurdle Mills, and the City of Roxborough, which covers the Person County 1 area just outside the city limits, have already had inspections to lower the ISO for their districts. CEFO is waiting on a notification from the state, which is going to be around November. Mariah and Triple Springs will be early 23, mid 23. Triple Springs has to wait at least a year because they acquired the Woodsdales district last year. So once they had their inspection, then to go from a 10 back to a 9, we got to wait a year. And of course, with COVID-19, everything with the state is backed up. So we would probably already be pretty much close to being done with everybody in the county. Person County Rescue does not get a grade for ISO inspection, but they are also required to do the same criteria that the fire departments are supposed to do. So they can obtain different levels of rescue certification, which require certain numbers of members to obtain that certification, and they need the part-time personnel in their station as well. Making ISO bonus money the same across the board for the departments. This will allow the rescue squad to do the same as the VFDs. Currently, you're awarded $7,500 per point, and is per Lord, and only paid a small portion of a part-time staff. So your presentation that we have here, request for part-time staff. So do you and your family deserve a timely response in an emergency? Yes, you do. Do the citizens and visitors in Person County need and expect the best service that we can provide to them? Yes, you do. In the critical moments of need, how long do you want to wait? As little as possible. So right now, based off the 2010 census, the 2020 hasn't come out yet, 60% of the citizens are served by a volunteer fire department and rescue squad here in Person County. We must plan now to improve our ability to respond to the most cost-effective means as possible. So what's required of a volunteer? North Carolina Office of State Fire Marshal sets the rules, and with a volunteer firefighter rescue squad member, all you have to have is 36 hours of training a year. So that's one meeting a month for 3 hours, you get 36 hours. But that doesn't give you all the certifications that you need. So you see there, firefighters 514, EMTs 228, technical rescuers 520. They went back and changed all that back in 2020 and actually increased the hours on that. So those hours are now critical, and they're actually higher. So once you're certified, the next column down shows the firefighter, all you gotta have is 36 a year, EMT is 24, and rescue is 36. The fire chief ultimately has the decision. So once a new person comes in, if they come to 36 hours of meetings a year, that doesn't mean they get certified to get to go into a fire. They have to be able to perform certain tasks, to be able to wear the equipment and the gear to be able to do that. So the fire chief is ultimately responsible for them in the volunteer setting. So once you go to a career, that's where these numbers right here come into play. So the objective of this is identify the problem, propose a solution, and explain the implementation. So the problem is the number of emergency calls continues to increase for the volunteer fire departments. It's no longer just fire calls. So it's medical calls, it's cardiac respiratory arrest, diabetic, difficulty breathing, strokes, overdoses, etc. COVID, we went 2 years, we really didn't run the medical calls unless they were a certain level. Everybody went back to that starting January 1st this year, so the call numbers have actually increased. Automatic fire alarms and false alarms. So if you have a fire alarm in your residence or a commercial building, that you go to those. Citizen complaints concerning illegal burning, smoke complaints, malfunction of fire alarm systems, smoke detectors, beeping, chirping, smell of gas. We go after that. 911 is always a number that everybody calls. When they can't find the problem or the solution to it, they call and the fire department comes out. Motor vehicle accidents. So down trees in the roadway. So the DOT is responsible for it during the daytime hours. But after they leave in the afternoon, the fire department's the one responsible. So when there's a hurricane, a thunderstorm, ice storm, which we get those here, your local volunteer fire departments are out there in that elements, cutting those trees at the road so that you can make it home from work. DOT only comes out if it's a large tree or something's actually wrong with the road. And hazardous material incidents. So you see here the problem continued. An overall decline in volunteer memberships in the department, plus increased training requirements, plus increased family priorities equals fewer people available to respond to your emergencies. So your red is 2018, that's how many members you had then. Your orange is 2021. So it used to be when these fire departments were put together, everybody was self-employed, there were farmers, they could leave what they were doing and go get the truck. Now the tables are reversed. You have everybody's working now, and you only have a handful of people available during the daytime. And what I mean by a handful, it's literally a handful. During the daytime, I can pretty much count on my hand who's available in the whole county to run the calls. So with me being in the role I am and being a firefighter, that's where I come into play. That's one more set of hands to help get that alleviated. So your current ages of volunteers, and yes, we will take your data and go back and fix it a little bit, but it's really not going to change that much in percentage-wise. So we do let them come on at 15 as a junior firefighter, up to 18, but they can't take a certified class until they reach the age of 18, so that's why we included that. The thing to it, like she mentioned earlier, 46 to 67 is 75 members. Right now, Person County will have 214 volunteers to serve the whole county. So 68 and over is another 8%. So roughly 43, 44% is your upper class, your older ones. So within the next few years, those numbers are going to start to drop off because they're going to retire out and say, hey, I've done my time. I'm ready to go home and sit back. So the age continued. There are 7 volunteer fire departments and 1 rescue squad in Person County. One of the 7 fire departments, which is some more, they cover district in Person and Caswell counties at Hyco Lake. Person County Rescue Squad assists with all motor vehicle accidents and rescue calls. They respond to structure fires for rehab, and they're the only ones that have the boats for the 4 lakes that we have here as well. So if we have something going at the lake, they're the ones that respond. Most of your volunteers in the age group are 46 to 67 years old. 15 to 18 is your lowest. So that's concerning to our future. We don't have those members coming to beat on the door to get into the fire departments. Your age groups that fall in between your 19 to 30, 31 to 45, 46 to 67 are your 80% of them, and they're your working class folks. They work the Monday through Friday job from 8 to 5, so they can't respond to the call. They're only there at night times and the weekends. And like I said, the 68 plus age group potentially is retiring the next 5 years. So if you got into a volunteer fire department, you can pay into the State Firefighters Association or Rescue Squad, either one, for 20 years. If you reach the age of 55, you can actually start drawing a monthly check. It's not a whole lot, but it gives you something back for what you put into it. So those members can start potentially drawing that. They put their time in, added training to it that's done now. They could just say, hey, I've done my time for the community. I'm ready to go home and retire. Adding the part-time paid members to the departments also increases the total number that's allowed for the departments. So you got to have 15 of your 1 station, 19 of your 2 stations. So when they do the ISO score, they'll actually consider that as 1 paid person equals 3 volunteers. So when the department does their 5-year inspection again, that will actually benefit them on that. Why is this important? North Carolina Office of State Fire Marshal requires that a single station department have 15 members on their roster. If they have a second station, which most of your county has it, there's only 3 single stations. That will be Allensville, Timberlake, Samora, and then if you count Person County Rescue, they're a single station. So your other 4 have 2 stations. So they have to have 19 members on their roster. In the last 3 years, there have been a slow decline in memberships within the departments in Person County. The exception to this is Woodsdale dissolved. Triple Springs acquired that, so they picked up some of their volunteers from there, so their numbers went up. Timberlake added a part-time personnel roughly 2 years ago. So they have one person that works during the day, they have a pool of folks that they pick from, they fill out a calendar schedule, and they work. North Carolina Office of State Fire Marshal also requires that the department respond with a minimum of 4 members. So 1 out of the 4 has to be an officer of the department. And it has to be 1 fire engine to all structure fires. So this is the critical part right here. All these departments work towards the ISO, but if you don't have anybody show up in that category right there, that means a no response. So then when you do your report and it goes to OSFM, they see that. So that means you had a no response. You go on probation. If it happens again the second time in a certain period of time, guess what? You just went to a 10. So I know you all probably got emails and phone calls from Woodsdale dissolved and went to a 10 classification. Just think if the whole county did that. Plus everybody's insurance rate is going to double because it means you don't have any protection. Time of the day response, your red is going to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and your orange is going to be 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So you see all of the departments are running more calls during the daytime than they are at nighttime. So that's just adding all the calls up together. So why does time matter? There's a quick video here. I'm not going to show that. Feel free to look at it in your time. It's about 2 minutes long, showing when a trash can actually starts burning and how quick it can actually engulf the whole room. But the key part down there is you're en route to arriving on scene. So once the 911 call gets dispatched, the fire department gets dispatched, that individual's got to leave home, they've got to drive to the fire station, they've got to pick up a truck. So that's where this time starts, is once they pick up a truck and check en route to the time they get there. Allensville's at the very bottom. They have the smallest district out of anybody here. So the courses don't take long to get there. And a lot of this too plays into how close somebody lives next door to the fire department. We do have some members that live next door to the fire department, so they can just jump right over and it helps out. But you see, you got anywhere from 4 minutes to 8 minutes. Now, rescue, they cover the whole entire county, so they're not centrally located. I mean, they are centrally located, so they've got to go out. They're not in that particular community, so their time is a little bit longer with that as well. So the solution to this, add 2 paid part-time personnel to each volunteer department working a 12-hour daytime shift Monday through Friday. How will this help? Guaranteed response, better response times, gives you mutual aid for your neighboring departments, equipment's clean, service is ready for use. So the key with this is on Tuesday nights, the fire departments meet. Once or twice a month, they've either got to do truck checks, they got to check their equipment, so that's taking time for them to doing vital training that they could be doing. The part-timer will be there, that kind of helps that get done every week. So you know when that gets done, so when they come on Tuesday night, you devote your time to doing fire training, rescue training, EMS training, whatever needs to be done. Station is always kept up, and it's a community service, so you're always there to help the community out instead of having to call and get an answering machine and leave a message and wait a week later. Implementation of this, raise the current fire tax from the 2.75 cent to the even 5 cents to fund this proposal. With the additional funding, adding 2 paid part-time personnel at each main station working a 12-hour shift Monday through Friday. It's $15 an hour, so we want to be competitive with everybody else around us. So we want to put $15 an hour. This includes your Social Security, the taxes that have to be paid at 10%, is what the accountant told us to figure in, and your workers' compensation insurance. And I'll touch on that in just a minute. Each department will be responsible for hiring, terminating, job requirements, day-to-day duties, timekeeping, supplies, etc. These expectations will be standardized across the county for all the departments. That way, if an individual wants to Hurdle Mills to work, and then they want the CEFO to work, it's the same rules, the same guidelines. They're not doing anything different from the other 2 stations, other than it may just be a daily duty. If they got fire hydrants, they may have to go check the fire hydrants versus a department that doesn't have them. But everything will be standardized across the board. The only thing that Person County government will be responsible for is the funding. That's why we're here asking for the extra funding. So this is just a chart showing you the departments on the side. So you see everybody has 2 except for some more. So with them having partial district, it was only fair to give them 1 person versus 2 person. But you know, they're fixing to expand out there. All these 160 some homes are fixing to go to the lake. So they're actually going to pick up a lot of call volume potentially. $15 an hour, then you got your taxes as 10%. So this is based off of 261 days a year to work. We're not counting the weekends and holidays, anything like that. So 10% of that, then your workers' comp. So right now, a volunteer you pay $65 a year for workers' comp. Once you go to the part-time paid status, it goes to $375. So with this, we want 2 people, but it's not going to be the same 2 people working all the time. So that is an average of 5 people. So you'll have 5 people to like pool from, and you'd have your calendar fixed out. Well, this individual can work today, but he may not be able to work no more this week. He can work next week. So you still have a pool of 5 to 6 that you can pull from. So that's where the $1875 come from for your workers' comp. for each department. Then your total cost at the bottom, $790,170. So this is a fire tax rate map. So of course the data from this is what was accessible to the public and the current tax rate. I did find some back 5 years ago. There were a lot less. So that's why I tried to get the most current. If you see the red county is Granville next door. They're currently working on a fire tax. They don't have one. Caswell, Person, and Warren County, as well as a couple other ones, are under 5 cents. That's why they're yellow. Anything that's green is 5 cents to 9 cents, and anything blue is 9 cents plus. It ranges all across. Most of them are like Person County, is just a straight flat fire tax, but some are actually based off the community you live in. You may actually get more, have to pay more in this community versus this community. So for the most part, and that's what it's mentioned that second bullet, Alamance, Davidson, Nash, Orange, so forth, have district tax rates.
Those are the white counties?
Ma'am.
Those are the
So the
counties that
white
white-
counties are just ones that I couldn't find some data for,
Okay.
or didn't fill the whole map up. So in conclusion, Person County needs to provide its residents with the best possible emergency response. Our current method is getting us by for now, but it's quickly being overstretched with the decline of volunteers coupled with an increased number of emergency responses. Therefore, providing each volunteer station with paid personnel will ensure a timely response, resulting in better survival rates and medical calls and lower property loss and fire calls. All departments have already or are currently working towards the ISO grade to help the homeowners in the districts. This is ensuring the best quality of fire protection, effective and adequate training, above standard equipment, pre-plans for the businesses, and adequate water supply to the community. So ask yourself these two questions. If you had an emergency, how long do you or your family member want to wait for help to arrive? If you are a potential new homeowner, business, or industry looking to move to Person County, would you not want a quick response and the best possible ISO rating for that area? So businesses and industries are looking at these numbers as we continue to improve them. They may have an impact on generating new tax growth to the county. So in your packet, you have some extra material. Should be a 2018, 19, 20, 21 spreadsheet. So what we done is we took the graphs, we took the data from all the departments, so to just kind of run through the top of it so you can see. So that's the time 911 dispatch to the actual en route. So you see you got an average of time there. En route to on scene time is the time they left the department with the piece of apparatus to get to the call, and then your total time there is what's adding it together. So we got anywhere from an average of 9 minutes to 12 minutes throughout the county. The average number of responders is your next column. The total number of members for that year, total number of fire calls, EMS calls, and the total number of calls answered for the year. So we have that broke down for 4 years of data. You do have a age spreadsheet in there that's broke down for each department to fit those numbers, and it's letting you know whether it's 1 station, 2 station, 15, 19, and your total number of members throughout the department, as well as your daytime versus your nighttime calls and your tax map. So as of today, these departments have answered over 900 calls already since January 1st this year, 2022. All of the material has been prepared and shown to you tonight. Was at no cost to you all, other than the time it took the members in the department to put it together. We are currently riding on the curve, but look at what's potentially being approved for the city of Roxborough in the next 5 years. 1,000 new homes are coming there. So also new homes are being built within the county. Other counties around us are having new growth, new industries. All that's going to start to spill over to Person County. So we're potentially going to keep going up with the call volume. As potential industries or Person County are looking at the mega site, having the ISO rating and some type of pay staff across the county will influence that, because they want to see the fire protection and the response that's going to be able to come to the call. We're currently working with Caswell County for a possible automatic aid assistant for the area on the western side of the county that has the ISO 10. So once we get that done, there should only be a few small pockets left within the county. That's going to be harder to identify, because then it's going to take putting a station there or moving district lines, which is going to get in a whole lot more money than doing this. So that was one of the goals as well, was try to get everybody within a 10 down to a 9 or less with the fire tax. So we're potentially working with that as well. With the 5 departments already lowering the ISO score, we've heard homeowners say they've saved anywhere from $200 to $800. So example, $165,000 is the average for the property. They pay $45. If we go up to the 5 cent, they're not going to quite double their fire tax, so they're paying $90 thereabouts. So if they save $200 here, and we go up on the fire tax, they still pay $90. They're still saving $110 throughout the year because of what the fire departments have done to help that. So the increase will not quite double. And we've heard the support from all the departments are behind this, even community members are behind it as well. So in closing, you see the volunteer participation is steadily declining due to the changing times and the culture here. This is not just a Person County problem. This is all across North Carolina, even the United States. So we're not the only ones faced with this. We are currently working on ways to promote recruitment in the communities through signs out front of the stations asking for volunteers. Most of them have social media pages where they post on there different trainings that they do, flyers, public education events, etc. But we are welcome to any new suggestions that you may have to help with that. A new high school program is scheduled to start this fall, at 23, at Person High School, so a candidate can actually go through the whole firefighter program, and when they graduate, they'll have the firefighter certification. This was proposed 2 years ago when COVID came, and then it got kind of canned. So now it's back in the books again. They've already got an instructor to do that. So that's a way we can potentially pick up new folks. So we all understand that no decision will be made tonight, of course. Please give the proposal the utmost thoughts, to the end that it will benefit not only the volunteer fire departments and the rescue squad, but the county as a whole. We hear it just like you all do. Nobody wants to pay any more taxes. We understand that. But look at the cost of everything today is rising. The cost of turnout gear has gone up over $1,000 just since last year. So everything is continuing to go up. But this is a service that will have benefits to give back to the taxpayer, keeping us all from falling behind. This is only a small piece of the puzzle that you all have to look at. So in your budget process as well. So my office is downstairs at 153. So anytime you, the public, anybody wants to come ask, feel free to come by. Go to your volunteer fire department in your community on Tuesday nights. They're usually there. Monday nights is Person County Rescue and some more. But feel free to stop by there and see what all it takes for those departments to operate, what they actually have to do, the fundraisers, everything else that goes along with this. So thank you for your time and your support. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair. I just want a great presentation. Thank you very much, Adam. I just going back to volunteering. If you think about it, how difficult it is for you to get volunteers in the volunteer fire department. You went over the turnout gear, what you have to have, and what they have to have, training they have to have. And it takes a special person that's going to sit there and volunteer free to go into a burning building or a burning house, and so, or to go to a big brush fire. Again, it's not a easy job, and it's certainly a dangerous job. But I can see where it's tough to get volunteers for that. So I just want to make that comment.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what the annual loss from fire is in the county? From the different fires that you go to, do you know what the annual property loss countywide would be?
I can go back and get you the data from last year, and then what I've done so far since I've been in the office. I know since I've been here, I've already done 6 investigations.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of those fires were already total loss. Some
Okay.
of them won't. But I can get that data for you and send it back out.
I
so
just
that you
kind of
can
like to
see.
know what the overall impact on property damage is from fire and loss of that kind, because I think that's very impactful for people to know what's at stake. The ISO ratings, what is the lowest ISO rating available?
So it goes from 10 to 1.
Mhm.
1 is the lowest.
Okay.
But that's going to be at a career department. So at your volunteer level, 4 is what a couple of them have achieved. Samora and Timberlake have achieved that.
Okay.
That's about the lowest you can get. If you have hydrants in your whole district, you may potentially go to a 3. But since we're still rural, that's not happening right now. So
Okay.
the lower you go to 1, the better score you get. But once you get down to, well, it depends on your insurance. Farm Bureau, for example, when I talk to them, each time you keep going down, they still give you a discount.
Mhm.
It benefits more the commercial building the lower you go as well.
Mhm.
But your average around 4 to 5 is what most insurance companies are gonna stop at.
Okay. One and a half last questions
Oh,
for
you're
me, I
fine.
think. So on the positions, the two part-time paid positions per facility, is it possible to have a crew, if all the standards are the same with all of the departments, can we have a crew that can be cross-utilized to different stations? Because if you only have 2 people here, you're dependent on 2 people part-time. What happens if there's a problem with those 2 people? But if you have a crew of 24 people and if you can't be here, you can be over here if
Mhm.
needed. Is that a possibility
Yes.
to do something like that where you have a bigger pool that can cover countywide?
And so with
If they're
this,
cross-trained?
if we do the 2 per station, so a structure fire, you get 4 departments. Some departments have 5 departments coming. So the city of Roxborough is already sending them, they're not on a call, so that's 3. So we'll take them out of the equation. But then you have 3 other departments, so that's 2, 4, 6 more potential people that will be showing up. to
No,
help
I'm
them.
talking
Yeah, but I-
about the part-time
Yes.
people, when they show up to work to man the station.
Mhm.
Can they be cross-trained to go say, okay, they're at Sonora here, but you need somebody over in
Yes, yes,
Allensville?
yes.
Can this
Yes.
flexibility be there? I mean, as long as everything's gonna be standardized, I would
That's
think
right.
that would, okay.
You mentioned recruitment earlier. Ironically, I had talked to Gary Dietz Saturday night, I believe. Or was it Saturday before at the station down there? So what do you do when you go to the high schools as far as, excuse me, I'm trying to catch a leg cramp. What do you do, or how often do you go to the high schools? Or do you just go to one school? You don't go to Roxborough Community?
So it should be a little bit of each one of them, the middle and the high school. Once a year, they do like, kind of like a job fair type deal where you kind of go in and you explain yourself or what you do. They come out, Northern Middle School just did this a couple of weeks ago. Kind of like the kids, they do a touch a truck, but it's kind of like learning about your job. The forestry, the police, the fire department, EMS is there. So you kind of do a little bit of there. With me coming in this role, it's something I want to work on to revamp, and doing it with the elementary schools, doing some type of program with them, so they get the fire safety needs, and then build it on up.
Do you pick up many students typically? Well, you said you just come out of
A lot
COVID,
of them, I ask the first thing, how much am I getting paid? So we have no pay because it's strictly volunteer, so then they just walk on off somewhere else.
Okay.
So with all of us, our mindset, when we come up, you kind of volunteer to give some back. Now everything is looking at money. So it doesn't have anything with that. They don't want to participate.
I'm a little confused on the pay scale and the tax and the workman's comp.
Mhm.
Does the pay scale only cover their pay and the county absorbs the taxation?
So
for
with the 790,000 total at the very bottom, that
I did,
covers
yeah.
their pay with the taxes, Social Security part of it,
Okay.
as well as the workers' compensation.
Okay.
So when we talked to the accountant here, he said figure 10% for each employee, 261 days, so that's where those numbers come in for that. So it's strictly funding everything.
Oh, I think this is a big one. They're part-time employees working 12-hour shifts. Do they only do a daytime shift, or do they do a nighttime shift also?
That has been asked. There was a committee formed together from the Chiefs Association to kind of have everything standardized. So with that, a question was asked, hey, if I got 2 people, but I need 1 person during the day and I have a potential need for at night, can that chief let them work? So that would be totally up to that department, that chief. If they see that need for it, then yes, they can do that.
Thank you, Adam.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
Questions, anyone? Not. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
working free. No consultant. Item number 6 on the agenda is county state of emergency and emergency management. Commissioner Gentry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wanted to bring forth the current Person County Emergency Management Ordinance. One, it was really difficult to find. And if you go on our website right now, and I know we're working on a new website, but you can't find it. And so I was really concerned, then I started reading through it, and I thought, it's been since 2013, 2014, it needs to be reviewed. And I think some adjustments need to be made to it. So I understand that we have someone here that's going to speak to us on that matter.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Tom Schwallenberg. I'm the Director of Emergency Services. Appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. We're going to review the 2 current Person County emergency ordinances. So the first one is the State of Emergency Ordinance. It was adopted in December of 2013, and this was after about a 30-year sort of review of the emergency management statutes in North Carolina. They determined they weren't meeting, so in 2013 there was a North Carolina Emergency Management Act. And basically what that act says is that the governing body of jurisdiction is responsible for the prevention of, the preparation for, response to, and recovery from emergencies or disasters. So the Board of Commissioners adopted the state of emergency ordinance in 2013, and the chairman of the board has the authority to declare a state of emergency if the chairman feels an emergency exists or is imminent. What's important is that we understand what the definition in North Carolina statute is of an emergency. So an emergency is defined as an occurrence or imminent threat of a widespread or severe damage, injury, loss of life, or property resulting from any natural, man-made, accidental, military, paramilitary, weather-related, or riot control cause. The chairman of the Person County Board of Commissioners is authorized, empowered under the General Statute 166A-19.22 and 166A-19.31 to make a finding of an emergency and may issue a public declaration if such an order to protect property and lives of people within Person County. This ordinance goes on to define certain actions through authorizations and restrictions that may be included in that declaration. Specific authorizations are specifically can be for all or part of the county. The chairman can decide whether this affects everybody or just affects certain parts of the county. Can also specify specific times, whether this be day or night, full or partial. That all has to be included in the declaration. There are exemptions or restrictions for people who are performing line of duty in their scope of work. So this would include firefighters, EMS personnel, healthcare workers, however it's defined by the chairman, or employees that work in critical infrastructure sectors. Generally, the authorization allows for the restriction or exemption that serves the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Person County. What is required from the declaration is that it be broadly communicated to the public. Our current ordinance references the media, though certainly, again, as you stated, moving forward, there are certainly other avenues to do that as well. The state of emergency ordinance also has other prohibitions and restrictions. This includes evacuations, whether those be mandatory or voluntary, curfew that can be put in place either for all of the county or parts of the county, again, based on need. The restriction on the possession, consumption, and transfer of alcoholic beverages, and the restriction on possession, transportation, and transfer of dangerous weapons or substances. Our current ordinance goes into great detail about what is defined as a weapon and what is defined as ammunition. But also remember that this also includes substances that are dangerous in nature. This could be deemed a substance that's deemed to be hazardous, such as certain chemicals that could impact the environment, bulk material that could be used for bomb making, for example, if this was a terrorist-related event, or removal of fuel sources during the event in which the energy sector is impacted. So it does not just include firearms. What is important is notwithstanding anything in the ordinance to the contrary, dangerous weapon or substance is not deemed to include anything that impacts citizens that have lawfully possessed firearms or ammunition. Other prohibitions or restrictions include restrictions to access or areas. As we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, you can restrict access to certain areas, you can restrict movement of persons in public spaces, operations of businesses, and places of assemblage. And again, I think what's key in our current ordinance is it says other activities reasonably necessary to maintain order and protect lives. The ordinance goes on to say that there are certain processes to rescind, supersede, or amend an existing declaration, either in part or totality, or to terminate the declaration. The ordinance does also make note of a penalty for violation. It's a Class 2 misdemeanor in accordance with General Statute 166A-19.31 and General Statute 14-288.20A. Thought it was also worth noting that there is territorial applicability, which basically means that the emergency declaration made by the chairman of the board will only apply to within the jurisdictional boundaries of the county. So i.e. would not include the city of Roxborough. They would be they would be required to make a decision if they wanted to do a similar emergency declaration. The next item we're going to talk about is the Emergency Management Ordinance. This was adopted about a year later, in December of 2014. And again, this was based off the North Carolina Emergency Management Act. It says that each county is responsible for reducing vulnerabilities of people and property, preparing for prompt and efficient rescue, care, and treatment of threatened or affected persons, provide for restoration of property and treatment of those affected, and then provide for cooperation, coordination, and activities related to an emergency. These are typically referred to as mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. The board also has a responsibility to coordinate and collaborate with all stakeholders, to include governmental and non-governmental agencies and organizations, to manage an emergency within the county. So the ordinance establishes the Office of Emergency Management, which is currently held underneath the Department of Emergency Services, which also oversees the Division of Emergency Medical Services and Division of Emergency Communications. The emergency manager role is to be the conduit for the Board of Commissioners to exercise their authority and responsibilities for all issues related to emergency management through a constant cycle of preparedness, prevention, mitigation, warning, movement, sheltering, emergency assistance, and recovery. Again, this is a collaborative effort that involves all functions of government and both public and private stakeholders. Within the ordinance, there's the appointment of an emergency manager, who here in Person County also serves as the Director of Emergency Services. I look at the roles in the ordinance and kind of group them into 5 large categories. 1 is coordination with stakeholders. 2 is collaboration with entities needed to make our emergency plans work. Planning, which includes both short, intermediate, and long-term planning for events and resiliency. Education, to include citizens within the government, business, community, and others. And then the representation of Person County at multiple local, regional, state, and federal levels, all dealing with emergency management. Within the Offices of Emergency Management, we're basically responsible for a planning effort. The 3 largest are the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, the Continuity of Operations Plan, and a host of specific plans to address both known and anticipated threats as required. What's important is to understand that these plans are held within the Office of Emergency Management, and they're distributed to key stakeholders as needed. We do not typically publicly publish these plans because there is elements in those plans that are public safety sensitive. However, that being said, certainly anyone on the Board of Commissioners can access those plans, and I'll be happy to help you do so. The last part of this is hazardous materials response. Really, we're looking at response, mitigation, and recovery. Again, this is a group effort in coordination with the Fire Marshal's Office, first responders, private agencies, as well as state and federal governmental agencies. So that's a review of the 2 current emergency management plans. Recommended actions, as I stated previously, the Office of Emergency Management is a tool to the Board of the County Commissioners, and to make available for your efforts for preparedness, prevention, response, mitigation, and recoveries, whether those emergencies be natural, man-made, or due to hostile action. In my opinion, based on 25 years' experience in emergency services, the 2 ordinances currently in existence meet the needs today of Person County. They're broad enough to cover a wide variety of contingencies for known and unknown hazards. They establish clear lines of authority, enable the government to provide services needed for the protection of life and property during an emergency. I've compared our ordinances to multiple other North Carolina jurisdictions and find them to be similar, though not exact. However, I think it's always prudent, since these 2 ordinances are almost 10 years old, to review and see if there are any improvements that can be made if that is the desire of the Board of Commissioners. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
I kind of agree with you when you look at the date, the last time that we've reviewed these. As you stated, they're pretty much consistent with other counties and municipalities, but I do think it's probably would be good for us to review and take a look at and see if there's these documents, see if there's anything that we want to add or and word a little differently.
Yes,
So
sir.
I do agree. I think we do need to look at that.
Yes, sir.
Other commissioner comments?
Yes, sir.
Question? Yes.
Yes, sir. I'll
ma'am.
try to make this brief. I know
Yes.
the hour is late and people are tired. So one of my concerns, and I know I was talking to the manager earlier, our current website, when I go in to look for North Carolina, Person County Emergency Services, it says page not found. And then when I go into the site for emergency services, I see tornado preparations, winter weather, hurricane, flood, pet, and some other miscellaneous stuff. So it seems like it's kind of choppy and not flowing well, and I understand that there's probably certain things that need to be kept confidential.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm not sure how we would address that, but I think that is an issue that I would like to see clarified, because when I went to look for this ordinance, I couldn't find it. I had to go to the manager's office, to the clerk, and say, where do I find this thing? This should be easily accessible. I'm not taking this out on you. I'm just saying this really needs to be changed. In here, it says the ordinances, we have a Person County Office of Emergency Management. That's not clear. I think it should be clearly stated. The ordinance, it will not abrogate the authority or responsibilities of the chairman of the Person County Board of Commissioners or any county department given to them in the county charter. What's in the county charter here, Mr. Attorney? This is something that maybe, you need to look at, because I'd like to, is it just the sole responsibility of the chairman to declare an emergency situation based on our charter? And if that is the case, I would like to suggest that we have the entire board involved in the process of doing so.
Brief comments from me. Gentleman mentioned that there was a comprehensive rewrite of these statutes in the General Assembly in 2013. I don't think there have been any very significant changes since then that I remember. That rewrite at the time was after, you remember, Hurricanes Fran, Floyd, several other natural disasters. A lot of lessons were learned. But those statutes had always provided to the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners in the case of counties and mayors in the case of cities, it always provided that authority to sign the emergency proclamations to those elected officials, and the General Assembly didn't change that in 2013. So the part of the ordinance that says none of it is intended to infringe upon the authority provided to the chair by those statutes really is a necessary provision. I'm sure there's some room to talk about the proper allocation of roles and responsibilities between just the chair on one hand and the entire board on the other, but you obviously have to comply with what the statutes say.
Right, and I'm not trying to suggest that we get around it. I'm just saying, in light of the fact that what happened with our impact loans, I just want to make sure that the entire board is informed and aware in a public setting as to what's going on. So I think that is important. Emergency management forces means all employees, equipment, facilities, all county departments, boards, councils, institutions, and commissions. Everybody, every board,
Just gives you broad
coverage, okay. Regulations shall include plans, programs, and other emergency procedures deemed essential to emergency management. So those regulations are not confidential?
So-
If they're deemed essential to emergency management?
So I'm afraid I'm not
I'm
following.
talking
you, ma'am.
about
So-
regulations, I'm talking about the definitions here, going through these definitions.
So I would say that the definitions themselves are not confidential. What I would say
Okay.
is public safety sensitive, which is a term I prefer over confidential, is there are things within the elements of those plans that you don't probably want to be publicly available.
Okay. All right, county managers appoints a coordinator of the Person County Emergency Management Agency. who then is accountable to the Board of Commissioners. The coordinator is responsible to the Person County Board of Commissioners in regard to all phases of emergency management activity. Okay, so I guess my question is why, if you're appointing or hiring the person, but they're accountable to us, why are we not in that process? Am I?
I think, Commissioner Gentry, first of all, you make an excellent point that 10 years has passed, and I think it's always a good idea with significant ordinances like these two to review them and consider enhancements, clarification, maybe a complete rewrite. I doubt that's necessary in these cases, but probably some clarification and enhancement. There's some terms in here that probably are more applicable to cities than counties. For example, that term charter really refers to a city, not a county.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Let me see here. What is the service chief? Each service chief and department head assigned responsibilities in the plan shall be responsible for carrying out duties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What side, that, there's no, that's not in the, that's not in the definition, so I don't know what a service chief is.
So if we were in an emergency situation where we stood up a emergency operations center, then we would designate within that emergency operations center chiefs that would be responsible for certain functions of the event to help manage the event.
Okay, it just wasn't in the definitions, and I think it was just unclear to me. Okay, so that's just kind of some of the things. One of the things that on the emergency orders that were the declaration of a state of emergency, that there was no timeline on review or ending it. It just kind of went on indefinitely. And I would like to see something in our emergency declaration, our emergency management ordinance, that says that any declaration of state of emergency in Person County shall be reviewed no less than every 30 days by the complete Board of Commissioners. I mean, if it needs to be continued, it needs to be continued, but I just really think that COVID taught us a lot of lessons, and we just ran it out, and then, oh my gosh, when's it end? And it's kind of silly that we're just not paying attention, and I would like to see a more thorough review on a continuing basis. So if we can rewrite some of this to implement that, I would like that.
I agree, concur with you completely, totally. COVID did teach us a lot in a lot of different ways. When it was brought to my attention that that water was still floating out there, our clerk says we can cease that today, or we can wait until next board meeting. And to which I replied, let's do it right now. And so she did that very day. And so here again, this board should be involved, engaged. When you see an issue or a problem, we correct it. That's what we do as a board, or should do. So the time factor there, I think, is important. That's included in any adjustment that we make to that, including things that Mr. Attorney has mentioned. So I think it's well within order to go forward with revisiting this policy and get the heads together and make it new, or make a new one. And again, that's what we do. These, we're going back to 2013, 2014, 2020, and all the things that are happening, and we need to revisit, especially something of this importance and magnitude. So I don't know how we proceed. Do we want the manager and staff to report back to this board with a revised policy? Is that pretty much?
Sure. If you all have specific revisions that you'd like to see included, if you could let us know, we'll bring you sort of a red line copy so that you can see what has been changed. and I've taken a few notes and
Okay, I was gonna say, if you know, I'd be happy to sit down and do
Yep.
more, but, you know, that, I'd appreciate that.
yeah,
And
we
then,
can do
Okay.
then we'll bring it back to the board for consideration, once the revisions are made and adoption.
Would it require a public hearing to revise?
I don't recall that it requires a public hearing. I'll look. But there certainly are things that can be discussed. Some of the things you mentioned that probably the board has absolute discretion and authority to do that are not incompatible with what the statutes say. I mean, there's some things you can't do. You can't substitute the authority of the entire board for the chairman when the statute says the chairman.
Right.
But there are lots of things in between.
No, I'm not questioning the authority, I'm
Right.
just saying, what I saw, well, what I believe I've discovered was that an action was done that really wasn't recognized by the entire board. It was just kind of done very quickly, and I want to avoid those things in the future, so I want the board to be fully involved. Not just the chairman. The chairman has the ultimate authority to make the decision to do the declaration, but I just think the entire board needs to be.
And consider
In the
too
mix.
the nature of why you are doing the declaration and
Right.
the response time. We've got to notify the public in
Right.
advance. So that too should be considered and addressed. 24 hours, 48 hours. But, you know, we got to do that.
And on the question of the public hearing, even in a situation where the statute does not require a public hearing, the board can always have one anyway.
We can do something without statute?
Yes.
Imagine that.
Sometimes.
We could adjourn, couldn't we? Oh, no. Okay. Anything else?
Would you like me to try to tackle the budget amendment for Commissioner Gentry?
Sure.
Were you done with the?
Thank you, Tom.
Services? Thank you, Tom. So on the budget amendment, I would like to offer a breakdown of each of those amounts, because there are several pieces that make up those totals, and let me know if
Okay.
if that satisfies what you're looking for. So we're basically offsetting fund balance with some grant revenues that are being received. That emergency management grant is for $18,230. And then we are also appropriating fund balance for your IT, in the IT systems fund for that cybersecurity item that you had at your last meeting. So that is the offset there. So I'll just go through each one. The 219,157 on the expenditure column, that's for the IT systems fund.
Right.
The public safety 18,000 is that roots and wings. The human services, that was the 3,932. That is made up of the 1609 veteran services and the excuse me, energy neighbor program revenues at DSS. So down on revenues, your 1,500s is that donation for the Sportsplex.
Right.
That 40,000 is made up of the emergency management grant for 18,230. Let's see, $1,800 is the Roots and Wings, 1609 is the veterans, and then 2323 is the energy. That comprises your 40,162.
All right.
And then the fund balance appropriation is just that 219,157 less the 18,230 grant revenue
Okay.
that we received.
Thank you.
Does
That
that make
makes sense now.
sense?
Yeah. It's creative accounting.
Well, we have a spreadsheet, and I'm thinking we probably need to start including that shows the columns and the offsets and where they're going. Maybe. So I think I'll try that in the next one,
Okay.
pasting that, and see if that helps.
Anything else?
Oh, I would need a motion for
Yep.
approval of the Budget Amendment 18.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a promotion that we approve budget number A to include.
We
On
have
the
a
consent
motion on the
agenda.
floor. Further questions or comments? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the board? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carried. Okay, I guess we're working overtime, but we'll move along. A couple of things, 2 or 3 things on the, on my report and comments. This is National Small Business Week, so when you're out and about, compliment our small businesses and show appreciation for who they are and what they're doing for the citizens of Person County. And also there are a couple of events this week with a National Week of Prayer that I'll just point out for your information. There's one on the 5th, there's one on the 6th, one at 12, one at 12:15. Another thing too, going along with what Commissioner Gentry has mentioned here related to items that might be on the consent agenda related to finance. I concur with your thoughts and your concerns. So this may be another thing that we need to actually look at. I think anytime it's pointed out that we aren't being as transparent as some may think we should be, maybe we should correct that. I've sat on quite a few boards, and the movement of monies within the budget through consent is pretty standard procedure as long as it's budgeted. So I would make the request here that any funding requests or changes that aren't budgeted become an agenda item in the future. So we won't have any discrepancies there. Again, it's standard procedure, not only with boards with budgets our size. I have worked on other boards that conduct business the same way, and in particular one with as much as $1 billion budget. Such procedures are normal, they're routine, as long as they're budgeted. So I don't have any problem with going through consent items related to finance if they're on the agenda, on the budget rather. So I would make the recommendation or suggestion there that anything related to finance that's not budgeted become an agenda item for open discussion within the county. Another thing that has been mentioned sometime back last year with the budget has been something related to a public information officer. And we tried to go the consultant route for part-time. Is that the way
We tried to do a part-time temporary position and did not get any.
didn't get any response? We live, just like COVID changed a lot of things, we live in a different world than we did 2 years or 4 years ago. And we live in a either misinformation or disinformation age. I don't know which is the appropriate terminology for that. We have a regular request for public information. I don't know the responsibilities of such a position, what the job description would be, what the potential salaries may be. So I would request Manager York to look into that for us and bring back for discussion the possibility of a PIO officer or PI officer in Person County for discussion at a future date. And Manager York.
Sure, so a couple of clarifications, Chairman. The Public Information Officer position, we have a job description for that the board has discussed, and I have included this in the recommended budget that you'll be getting at your next meeting.
Good.
But the work sessions that will ensue after your public hearing are most appropriate time to discuss the level of funding that you'd like to commit to a new FTE, but that would be in your recommended budget, and I have planned for that at this point.
Thank you.
Departments know that they can't spend money that they don't have, so anytime we are asking for additional funding outside of what's in their budget, they do have to come to the Board of County Commissioners for a new appropriation during the middle of the year. And even after you either grant or deny that, if you grant that, we still have to bring a follow-up budget amendment to make it official. So that is happening. They cannot just make expenditures without having the funds available to do so. So we'll try to clarify that during the budget process too, what is actually in their budget, so that the board has a good understanding of what they're spending those funds on. And I also just wanted to remind you that we are coming back early tomorrow morning to do interviews now with 2 firms. That is an update I sent out this afternoon. So we'll start at 8:15 and finish a little earlier than we had projected.
Are we convening here?
We're meeting in here,
Okay.
yep. And they're all virtual. It is an open meeting. It will be a streamed meeting, so.
Are they zooming in live or just
That's right.
audio? Okay.
Zooming
okay.
in live, yeah. That's all I had, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sims.
Manager York, could I ask you a question, please?
Yes, sir.
I was thinking that I read last week it was 8:45, but now it's 8:15.
Well, the first interview will start at 8:45, but
Okay.
we're asking the board to come together at 8:15 so that we can give a little tutorial session, go through the proposals with summary sheets, and
motions.
you'll be prepared. Right, for the actual interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sims?
Yes, I guess my comments tonight are, we don't have an opportunity to comment during the 10-minute public comment. We listen to everyone's comments, and to me, it's just disappointing when either accusations are made and someone says someone said this or that, and I don't know if there's any validity to that. But then we're sitting here, we give the people of Person County an opportunity to have public comments. And so it's just disappointing, and I hate that, and I hate that some people, I feel like, get thrown under the bus when these comments are made. So again, I don't know, there's nothing we can do about it other than sit back and listen, but I just want to make that comment. I was disappointed what was said tonight.
Commissioner Palmer?
Yes, sir. Members of the board and audience, I would like to remind you all that Thursday, 9 o'clock is lineup time for Special Olympics at Person Senior High School, and the actual activities begin at 9:30. I think it is imperative that we support these handicapped citizens that we have, as well as all citizens and children especially. So I wanted to make sure that I reminded you all, if you weren't aware, if you have time, please go up there and spend an hour with them. Show them that you care. One more item that is very concerning to me, the job openings in the county now are nearing 40. This includes full and part-time employees, seasonal employees, of course. Some with the recreation department are part-time. It's very concerning to me, but I know we've talked about this before, but I just recently talked to one of our higher-ranking deputies, and the rumor mill says that the city boys are getting like a $12,000 increase in pay. I know we discussed raising the salary among our county employees, and I think we need to really get serious about this now, because some of these guys are potentially going to leave if they don't get raises, and the city guys do. So with that said, I think it's time to get serious about this.
Well, that's the budget process, right? Yeah, and we're facing that.
Commissioner Gentry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Pardon me.
I didn't know.
I am sorry.
I want to make sure.
I just figured it was my turn coming around the bend here.
Well, it
Yeah,
is,
So,
but,
yeah. So, I'm deeply concerned and have been with the amount of public records requests that we are continually getting, but I think it's just partly the times we live in, but it's also people want to know. And if they feel they're not getting the information, they reach out. And the most recent one that we've had is the most disturbing because it involves some of our leadership in the county acting in manners that are inappropriate, uncalled for, and it sheds a very bad light on the profession and on the county. And I think that it needs to be addressed. It's ethical. It's not legal, the activities, and we've got 3 members that work for the county, all involved in this situation, who should have known better. And I really hope that, Mr. Chairman, that we can find the right avenue to investigate this situation, because it concerns me greatly. No one in this county is above the law. No one.
Mr. Purdier?
On a positive note, I'd like to commend the Board of Elections for doing an outstanding job conducting this primary. I've been down there for 4 days, and I have to commend the director and her staff for just, things are just running so smoothly down there, so kudos to them.
Thank you, sir. All right. So could we get a motion to recess this meeting until tomorrow morning?
So moved.
8:15. That was quick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, don't speak. Hold your breath.
So you remember, I will not be here tomorrow morning, but if you need me on some procedural issue, I have my cell phone on.
Okay.